The hatch blew open, slamming hard against the bulkhead, and Valkyrin hit the deck in a controlled roll, plasma hissing across his left shoulder guard. Behind him, the corridor was already burning, shredded into slag by pulse rifles chewing through its spine. He didn't wait for the others. Didn't need to. The humans were right behind him. Commander Drexel came through first, her armored boots hitting with a clang that made Valkyrin's ears ring. No orders. No hesitation. Just the point of her arc blade cutting forward as her HUD painted 3 contacts waiting in the lower hold. The Ratatesh, filthy corsair scum, all teeth and wet flesh armor that oozed some kind of foul secretion. They never fought clean, but that didn't matter. The human behind Drexel, Carrick, fired first, a tight burst from his kinetic rifle punching through the closest Ratesh's faceplate before it could fully turn. The second got a knife in its throat before it understood the fight had started. The third, though it charged. It was the size of a transport crate, covered in synthetic spines, arms like hydraulic pistons. It should have crushed Drexel. Should have. But humans didn't play by the rules the galaxy wrote for them. She sidestepped, blade humming through its primary nerve cluster. It hit the deck so hard Valkyrin felt it through his knee joints. "Clear," she said, voice flat, not because she didn't care, because this wasn't a fight worth wasting words on. Valkyrin followed her into the next passage, his own rifle tight to his chest. He wasn't human, not by blood. But they dragged him out of a Dominion labor pit, bolted armor onto his bones, and told him he belonged to their crew now. He hadn't understood what that meant until the first time they fought back-to-back against Threx enslavers, and the humans refused to run, not until everyone breathing got out. Even him. Especially him. The deck shook underfoot, emergency stabilizers failing as the Corsair ship's core overheated. Carrick muttered something in his throat. Mick, voice lost under Drexel's next order. Bridge. Now. They didn't move like soldiers from the core worlds, no precise formations or ceremonial stances. They moved like monsters, made for war, adaptable, brutal, half feral in their efficiency. Valkyrin had seen them tear through boarding crews, shred through Xivathi Prime's elite security like they were made of glass. This was just cleanup. Another bulkhead parted ahead, and they stepped into the bridge, or what was left of it. The Ratesh captain was slumped against the command chair, half his skull fused to the console. Valkyrin didn't ask who fired. Didn't matter. Drexel took the seat without ceremony, her armored gauntlet slamming into the neural interface port. The human implants adapted instantly, overriding alien systems like they were built for it because humans broke tech the way they broke enemies, with their bare hands if they had to. Package is secured, she muttered into the mic. The package, if it could be called that, lay in a containment cylinder bolted to the deck, thrumming faintly with violet light. Valkyrin didn't know what was inside. Didn't need to. His job was keeping Drexel alive long enough to get it back to the fleet. But before anyone could celebrate, the whole ship shuddered. External proximity alarms flared red across every screen. Something was closing in fast, too fast for anything this deep in the belt. Carrick pulled up the sensors, and his face went pale. That's a goddamn Hunter-class singularity drone. Valkyrin knew the name. Every species in the Outer Verge knew the name. Dominion kill machines, designed to hunt ships and the crews inside them. One was enough to level a fleet, and it was targeting them. Drexel didn't flinch. She just stood, rolled her shoulders, and said, "Then we kill it first." Valkyrin could have sworn he saw her smile. Because humans didn't fear extinction. They adopted it, taught it how to fight dirty, and turned it loose on its masters. Valkyrin didn't ask how they planned to fight a singularity drone with a half-slag boarding team and a Corsair ship held together by rust and bad intentions. Humans didn't explain their madness. They just acted. Drexel wrenched her gauntlet free from the interface, sparks trailing from her wrist as the alien console screamed. Carrick was already sprinting toward the engineering bay, moving like a man who didn't have time to fear the thing hunting them. Valkyrin followed because that's what you did when you ran with humans. You followed into hell, or you got left behind. The ship groaned as the drone's gravity spike hit, warping local space until the bulkheads curved wrong, and the deck felt like walking across a wounded animal's ribs. Valkyrin's vision blurred for a heartbeat Raytesh biowiring in his spine, not built to handle the localized singularity distortion. But the humans? They just kept running. In the bay, Carrick slammed his fist against a rust-patched storage locker, prying it open to reveal a weapon Valkyrin had only heard rumors about: a schism lance. Illegal in 7 systems, designed to punch a rip into dimensional fabric wide enough to swallow a drone's core before the distortion could collapse back in. Problem was, you had to fire it point blank, and if you were off by a fraction, it took the shooter with it. "Who's carrying it?" Valkyrin asked, knowing the answer before the words left his mouth. Drexel took the lance without hesitation, shouldering it like it was made for her frame. Her breath came sharp, not from fear, but from anticipation, the kind Valkyrin had only seen in humans who'd already decided they weren't making it home. He'd seen it once before, back when a human crew cracked open his labor camp and dragged him into freedom at gunpoint. Back then, they smiled the same way Drexel smiled now, like the only thing better than surviving was taking the bastards who caged you down with you. Valkyrin's fingers twitched toward his sidearm. Not fear, habit. Raytesh doctrine taught him to calculate odds. Human doctrine taught him to break them. His implants screamed that engaging a singularity drone in a decaying ship was suicide squared. Drexel was already moving. "No hero speeches," she said over her shoulder. "Just follow and kill anything that moves." The next bulkhead folded open, and the outer hull tore like wet cloth vacuum, clawing at the corridor before emergency seals snapped into place. The drone didn't enter. It grew into the ship, its outer shell folding apart into spiked limbs that punched into every available surface, rewiring the vessel's nervous system in seconds. The ship stopped being a ship. It became a haunted corpse, dancing on strings held by something that hated life itself. Drexel charged toward it. Valkyrin didn't hesitate. He didn't have the luxury. He'd died once already. In that Dominion pit, the rest of his life was a gift humans gave him, and you didn't waste gifts, paid in blood. Carrick covered their flank, rifle tracking fast, firing faster. His rounds didn't even scratch the drone's outer shell, but they annoyed it, which was all they needed. Annoyance was attention, and attention meant Drexel had a clear line. She raised the schism lance, bracing against the trembling deck, her body half illuminated by the spiraling gravitational flare building in the drone's core. It was already charging its primary weapon, enough to snap the ship in two, and Drexel fired first. The lance roared. Space split. The fabric between realities tore like overripe skin, and something hungry reached through from the other side. The drone twisted, half its body already unraveling into shimmering debris. But the other half? It adapted. That was the secret. No one talked about singularity drones learn. Every engagement feeds the next. The lance worked once. It wouldn't work again. Drexel knew. Valkyrin saw it in her stance, her breath, the slight slump in her shoulders before she forced herself back upright. No complaints. No regrets. Just another plan needed now. "Back up," Valkyrin said, voice sharper than he intended. "We have to fall back." Drexel shook her head. No back left to fall to. Because the ship was dying, gutted by its own systems, turning feral under the drone's touch. They were inside a corpse, and the only way out was forward. Carrick's voice cut through the calm, half a laugh, half a curse. "Humans didn't adopt you to run, Valkyrin. Get your hands dirty." The drone surged, a twisted appendage snapping out, catching Drexel's leg and slamming her into the deck. Her armor screamed, warning glyphs, bones cracked loud enough to cut through comm static. Valkyrin shot the limb point blank, knowing it wouldn't kill, but it bought him 3 seconds. Enough to drag Drexel clear, enough for Carrick to fire a jury-rigged gravity mortar into the thing's exposed core. It staggered, not hurt, just angry. Valkyrin's hands shook, not from fear, but from memory, the memory of Dominion overseers who said Raytesh slaves were too weak to stand alone. They were right, but Valkyrin didn't stand alone. Not anymore. He shoved his rifle into Drexel's grip, knowing her arm was broken, but knowing she'd fire anyway. Human stubbornness was contagious, after all. He turned to face the drone, no rifle left, just his bare hands and a half-dead ship at his back. And then the ship itself spoke. A voice from deep inside the alien architecture, warped by human interface graphs, twisted into something that was neither human, nor Ratesh, nor machine. A voice built from battle cries and death rattles, the voice of every crew that died under Dominion chains and every human who dragged them into the light. B-U-R-N-I-T-A-L-L. Valkyrin laughed. It wasn't a sane sound. It was the sound of a slave-turned-soldier, a prisoner-turned-predator, a Ratesh who learned to fight like a human. The drone lashed out and the ship fought back. Emergency power rerouted itself without command. Hull plating sharpened into cutting edges. Atmospheric systems vented controlled flame into the corridors, turning every choke point into a killing field. The ship wasn't a vessel anymore. It was a weapon fueled by revenge and steered by hands too scarred to let go. Valkyrin caught Drexel's eye, and for a moment they were the same alien and human, adopted and adopter, both made for this fight. No words needed. The drone twisted one last time, caught between collapsing realities and a ship that refused to die quietly. Drexel smiled, blood in her teeth, fire in her eyes. Humans adopt monsters. Then we teach them how to win. Valkyrin hit the release for the secondary core. The ship detonated, but they didn't die. Not yet. Because humans never go alone, and they never leave their own behind. Valkyrin's ears rang from the blast, but the silence after was sharper. Not the silence of space, the silence of a ship deciding who still belonged inside it. Drexel coughed wet, clutching her ribs where shrapnel bit deep. Carrick's face flickered across the fractured hololink, static and blood-streaked, but alive. The drone's carcass hung in the corridor like a metal heart torn from some divine machine, twitching, but dead enough for now. That should have been the win. Except the ship's voice didn't stop. It whispered, still softer now, curling around them like a predator deciding whether they were prey or part of the pack. Valkyrin's implants hummed with corrupted code alien glyphs, tangled with human swearing, half system warning, half battlefield poetry. The ship wasn't just alive. It was awake, and something inside it remembered him. Designation, Ratesh Defector 712. Alias, Valkyrin. The voice not the ship's, not Drexel's. Something older pulled up from the deepest archives of human blacksite data grafted into the hull. Who the hell flagged you? Drexel grunted, trying to stand on her shattered leg, but Valkyrin barely heard her. He knew that voice. It was Dominion, not from the camps from before. From his trial, when the humans first found him half dead in a gutted raider ship and decided he was worth saving. That record was sealed. Buried. Lost when Earth's last data vaults burned under orbital siege. But the ship had it. Explain, Valkyrin demanded, voice cracking through the lingering smoke. No explanation provided. Orders encrypted. Trust compromised. Override authorized protocol Fenrir. Carrick's feed stuttered, his face caught between confusion and fury. What the hell's Fenrir? Drexel's smile didn't reach her eyes. That's a kill order. Valkyrin's pulse slammed against his ribs. His spine burned where his Ratesh graphs fused to human tech years ago, a marriage of biology and desperation. Fenrir was old code, a final leash, in case defectors turned back, in case allies became liabilities. The ship just woke it up. The ship their lifeline was deciding whether Valkyrin belonged. That was supposed to purge after first combat service, Valkyrin said, voice low, trying to keep the tremor out. I bled for humans. Earned my place. Systems don't care, Drexel said, cocking her sidearm with her good hand. Code just sees threat vectors. The air shivered not from the ship, but from the drone's corpse. It wasn't dead enough. Its core flickered, feeding false signals into the ship's veins, using Fenrir like a blade it found already buried in Valkyrin's back. It didn't hack the ship. It just reminded the ship of orders humans were too desperate to cancel. Carrick moved fast, too fast for wounded ribs and concussion haze grabbing Drexel's wrist before she could raise her pistol fully. We clear this now, he said. He's not the enemy. That's not our call, Drexel snapped. The ship decides. The floor shifted, corridors folding. The place where the ship's heart beat hardest, where Fenrir waited to finish what it started. We end this, Valkyrin said, already walking. End what? Carrick demanded. Either I kill Fenrir, or it kills me. Valkyrin's fingers twitched toward his belt, pulling a blade so old it didn't belong to humans or Ratesh. It belonged to before both. Drexel spat blood, limped after him. No one dies alone. Alien. Valkyrin didn't argue. Humans never let you die alone. They reached the core junction, a chamber where cables hung like veins and light pulsed like breath. And in the center, a chair. Old Earth steel. Prison issue. Bolted into alien flooring like a throne built for ghosts. Valkyrin had seen it once before, on the first day humans freed him. The chair remembered him. Sit. Confirm identity. Execute final loyalty test. No. Valkyrin's voice was too human for Ratesh, too alien for human code. You don't own me anymore. The chair's restraints snapped open like jaws. Carrick raised his rifle. This is bullshit. That chair's older than any of us. It's not just a chair, Drexel muttered. It's a gatekeeper. Old Earth black tech. It ran loyalty checks on defectors, made sure they weren't sleeper assets. Every Ratesh who joined us sat in one. Valkyrin shook his head. That's half the truth. His blade hummed in his grip. You don't test loyalty without something to compare it to. That chair's holding the past hostage. That's when the wall opened. And a figure stepped out. Ratesh, but not Valkyrin. Older. Scarred in ways no living skin should carry. A face pulled from Valkyrin's own memory, mirrored back at him with every failure exposed. 712. You abandoned your blood? Your code. Your origin. The voice wasn't quite his. It was what he could have become if the humans never found him. A traitor to both sides. Drexel raised her gun. Valkyrin shook his head. You can't kill a ghost. Who said I was aiming for the ghost? Drexel shot the chair straight through its heart before the past could speak again. The ship screamed. The ghost laughed. And from the split-open chair, something older than Fenrir crawled free, a fragment of code left behind by Earth's last intelligence division, the kind that didn't just watch threats. It became them. The code knew Ratesh loyalty, knew human fear, knew the shape of every betrayal. It was part ship, part ghost, part weapon, and now it was awake. Trust is a weakness, Valkyrin. You never belonged. Valkyrin stepped forward, blade raised. That's where you're wrong. I belong wherever the killing gets done. And today? That's right here. The ship locked the doors behind them. No escape. No reinforcements. Just a broken crew, a haunted ship, and a past that wanted everyone dead. Drexel wiped blood from her mouth and grinned. Let's finish this adoption paperwork. Valkyrin lunged. Valkyrin's blade hit home, but not into the ghost. It passed through empty light, scattering the projection like mist. The real threat was behind him. Drexel's gun swung up, not at the ghost, not at the chair, but at Valkyrin. Stand down. Her voice was iron, her grip steady despite the blood slicking her fingers. That blade's got Dominion code in it. I saw the glyphs when you drew it. Valkyrin froze, knuckles white on the hilt. You knew what I was. You fought beside me. I knew you were Ratesh, Drexel said, voice tight. I didn't know you were carrying Dominion tech inside your bones. That's not a defecting soldier, that's a sleeper. Maybe you didn't know. Maybe you did. Either way, we can't risk it. The ship systems flickered, responding only to her now. Valkyrin wasn't just cut off, he was locked out. His neural link to the black ship, his hard-won connection to humanity's last refuge, severed in a blink. You triggered Fenrir on purpose. Valkyrin's voice was low, razor-edged. You needed it awake to find something. Carrick's holofeed flickered back to life, but his face was blank. No anger. No shock. Just acceptance. They knew, Valkyrin, Carrick said, voice distorted with static. Since the beginning, every Raytesh defector's a risk. Every one of you had a back door. Your loyalty wasn't proof, it was bait. The door to the core junction sealed with a final, grinding clank. Bait for what? Valkyrin demanded. Drexel stepped back, giving herself just enough room to aim clean at his heart. For whatever they put inside you before you defected. Humans didn't trust your word. They trusted the thing that followed you. The air hummed, and from the split-open chair, a shape dragged itself up. Not the ghost of a Raytesh, something older. Smaller. Human-made, but alien-fed. A black box wrapped in living tissue, built to record, corrupt, and overwrite. Valkyrin's own spine implants began to burn, not because the ship was against him, but because the thing inside him recognized its twin. He wasn't just a defector. He was a carrier, the Trojan horse, the Dominion never meant to activate until now. Drexel's finger curled against the trigger. This isn't personal. Valkyrin smiled, teeth blood-stained, eyes too clear for comfort. It never is. He dropped his blade and drove his fist into the nearest bulkhead, his implants frying themselves in a single pulse, sending a manual overload through every Dominion fragment still buried in his body. The black box screamed a sound no human throat could make. The ship shuddered, rejecting the foreign code, spitting it out through emergency vents as charred mist. Valkyrin dropped to his knees, smoke rising from his spine. There's your proof. No leash. No back door. Just me. Carrick's voice cut in, sharper now. Drexel. Stand down. She didn't lower the gun, but she didn't fire. Instead, the ship spoke again, voice clear, final. Fenrir terminated. Raytesh designation amended. Valkyrin human asset. Valkyrin staggered to his feet. I choose my side. Every day. And I'll keep choosing it until there's no side left to stand on. Drexel holstered her weapon. We'll see. Then the ship's outer hull screamed proximity alarms flaring. Not for Dominion forces, but for something older. Something the ship had been hiding from all along. Carrick swore. We woke something up. The black box was a beacon not for Dominion, but for something both sides feared. Valkyrin wiped blood from his mouth. What the hell did you just call? Drexel didn't answer. Because outside the viewport, space split open. And something answered back.